Recording in progress.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the September 16th Sustainability Working Group meeting. I'd like to start off with the line acknowledgement. So Leslie, could you take a moment to read that, please?
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act?
None.
All right, seeing none. So we'll review the previous meeting minutes. Are there any issues with the meeting minutes, any amendments or omissions?
No.
Okay, can I have someone move that? Moved by Councillor Fenning, second by Leslie. All in favor? Yeah, that's carried. Okay, so moving on to business. First item on the agenda is the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program update. I did reach out to our Director of Parks and Facilities and Recreation earlier this week, and she did reach out to the region for an update. They don't have any updates at this point in time. I'm hoping in the near future we'll hear some news, and once I do, even before our next meeting, I'll maybe pass along the update if we do hear anything. Any questions on that? Okay, none? All right, so move on to the next item, the Sustainability Work Program. So there are no major items outstanding on the work program right now that aren't listed on the agenda, but I'll highlight a few. Didn't have a particular date, just maybe to remind us ourselves if they're going to be, if they need to be addressed next year or somewhat like that. So the first one I have is the corporate travel policy. That one's kind of been placed on hold due to other items HR has been working on recently. The waste green bin program, we've already done that. The other one that I think we have outstanding is recycle bins in downtown New Hamburg. I don't know if there's any update on that, Harold or Jen? No, that's fine. The other ones to note. Materials for facility renters, that's been on hold due to COVID. Rentals aren't as frequent as they were. And the other one that's noteworthy, it's on the agenda, is the Zero Waste Month, and that's later on the agenda, and we'll discuss that. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. The next one is the appointment of a new secretary. So we pretty much have everyone here except two individuals. Is there anyone willing to take the role of secretary? So I've been kind of chairing and taking notes along the way. Is there anyone willing to take on that role?
I'll do it.
Great. Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
So we'll just need to pass a motion to appoint Leslie. So that's moved by Manning, second by Harold, and all in favor? Thank you.
You're going to take notes for the rest of this meeting, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I'll go through the video and update the minutes there. All right, so thanks for that. So annual update report to council. So it's been a bit of a while since June. It's been quite a few months now. So the annual update report from the Sustainability Working Group went. That was under the consent agenda. Just wanted to have a quick follow-up. If there were any questions around that report? Okay. So we'll move on to the other report, the Transform WR, that was approved the same night. That one wasn't under the consent agenda. So just a brief highlight, I'm sure everyone's aware, so the plan did go forward and council made the amendment to include 50% emissions reductions by the year 2030 community-wide. Are there any questions surrounding that? We do have more of a discussion with respect to the action items and kind of getting that ball rolling from the township perspective, but on the report itself, any questions? Okay. So I did send that agenda, the list of action items earlier this morning. I did send it back in July as a reminder of what was included in the report. So there's two kind of ways I was thinking about how we can approach as a committee today specifically. Eventually, I think this is going to be a standing item where we review every once in a while to see how we're on progress to, these actions in turn would help us assist in achieving those emissions reductions outlined in the plan. But as a first approach for the committee, I did go through the list and I highlighted some things that I think are more near term and that we can begin as a committee to start working on. Or we can go through the list. I think there's about 43 or 47 on there that we can go through one by one as a committee and just say yes or no. Or we can, if you had a chance to go through and you want to share your highlights and believe, that's a priority for the committee, we can discuss that as well. So I'm open to comments or suggestions of how we want to initially approach this.
Ashton, it seems a lot of the items in the first one's like it's kind of almost repetitive in a way too. Like a lot of them are for transportation, trails, walking, cycling, and so forth. And I wonder if it could be condensed down a little bit, like the first one and the fifth one, all to do about walking and cycling and everything. So I don't know if it could be just tightened up a little bit to make a little more ease on that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely on the active transportation. I think some of them definitely do overlap.
Yeah.
And maybe as a committee, yeah, we can condense some of them for our internal purposes. But yeah, and for myself, looking through the active transportation and transportation in general, a lot of them are immediately applicable to us. Has there been any that you found that some stuck out to you that I think that would be a priority of the committee or in turn from a corporate perspective, full perspective? Harold?
Just briefly, I think what jumped out at me is how many of these we actually are actively, constantly addressing already. I think we're way ahead of the game compared to where some other municipalities may be a bit behind that. Sorry, my phone's ringing. That's the only problem with having Teams as your phone. If you're in a meeting and it's ringing, you can't turn the noise off. Anyways, so that's what jumped out at me without getting into a lot of detail, but our active transportation strategy, in particular between the major urban growth centers of Baden and New Hamburg, we're, I think we we'll probably surprise ourselves if we started to make a list of all the activities and projects and capital works and Mr. Mullenhouse's group as well. That's what jumped out at me.
Councilor Petty?
So I think maybe it might be useful just, because we've been talking about this and obviously haven't had the opportunity to meet as much as possible or as much as before the pandemic in the last while, but it might be useful to go through and just sort of highlight which ones, like if we go through line by line and highlight which ones we are already taking action on. I feel like that would be a good exercise, both for us as a committee and Mr. Peachy's joining us for the first time. I think that I've been on the call. Anyways, and for anyone watching.
Dean?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, as one who's not part of the staff and seeing and hearing what's happening on a daily basis, it would be helpful to get some overview on what is being done, progress. Part is that when also people talk to me and say, you're on the sustainability committee, what's happening, what's being done with these ambitious goals, I have some way of responding to them. So at what level makes sense to do that, I'm not sure, but at least in some way to be picking up some of the things and would be very helpful.
Agreed.
So would it be beneficial then for staff to pull together a response memo or something like that of current projects to circulate to the committee, and then that could become a public document at some point once the committee reviews?
Yep.
Sort of a strengths, weaknesses, gaps analysis, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, because I think even at staff level with multiple departments doing multiple things across the board, we may be surprised even department to department how many of these boxes are being addressed and looked at. So that's what I would suggest, is maybe for the next meeting we can have that prepared and part of the package to review.
Okay. All right. So then maybe we'll hold off on the individual items as this, and then, because I do have a template with comments to be filled in, and maybe we can fill those comments in, and at least then the committee would understand, and at least then because there might be some actions where we need to follow up on information. So I do like that approach now that I mentioned it, but Councillor Fenner, you had your hand up.
It's okay. You answered it already.
Okay, perfect. But at a high level, from anybody looking through the list, are there any other action items that you think maybe are noteworthy to discuss right now? Otherwise, we can hold off, and by the next meeting, hopefully, we'll have some feedback and comments for a number of the action items. Okay, so I'll take that as a takeaway, and I'll reach out to the necessary departments and receive some advice and comments. All right, so we'll move to the next item on the agenda under new business, the Myth Valley Eco Boosters quarterly meeting update. So I can't believe it was Tova as well was in the meeting back in June or May. It's been a while now, and I believe you were there, Dean. So just wanted to provide an update, and Dean, afterwards, please feel free to add your comments as well. But a number of the items we discussed, they just wanted some follow up on, or more information on the solar assessment, the EV charging stations, anti-idling, single-use plastics, and there's also some inquiry on environmental mandate and procurement, how that works together. And then also there's some discussion around the Transform WR plan. Similarly, the comments provided to them around the Transform WR was, it was actually, now that I remember, it was after it was approved, what we're doing at this point in time. And it's kind of the same response we gave right now, that we discussed earlier, that we're still trying to understand and get our bearing straight on those actions and kind of understand where we're at, so we know where to put our priorities moving forward. Dean, did I miss anything there, or anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't have anything to add at this time. Yeah. I think those are some ongoing conversation, communication things. Yeah.
Great. Any questions?
Do we have another meeting scheduled with them? Or when are we? I know we were sort of talking about making it regular check-ins. When's the next one?
He hasn't reached out to me just yet. I don't know, Dean, has there been any discussion about that on your end, Eco Boosters?
I missed the last Eco Boosters meeting, so I'm not sure. I did see an agenda just come in for the next meeting, but I haven't opened that email yet. So I will do a bit of follow-up on that.
Thanks, Dean. Okay, so Dean, you're up. The Let's Tree Wilmot update.
Okay, thank you. So Let's Tree Wilmot is a new group, just got started last year. We had our first public meeting actually in March, on the day that the World Health Organization declared that we had a pandemic. So it's been a challenging time to start a new activity, new organization, but it has actually gone really well. The level of sort of public enthusiasm, response, participation has been really quite remarkable on this. So I'm delighted to have a chance to put this on the agenda today to talk about Let's Tree Wilmot. And I want to do, I think, three things. One is to just sort of give you an update on what we're doing. Secondly is to review the sort of objectives that we are talking about as a community organization and to look at how that meshes with township objectives, if there's ways that we would tweak our objectives or so forth. And then thirdly, one of the things that we're going to need to do if we're serious about these objectives is to have a way of, on an ongoing basis, monitoring progress. And that means getting some current baseline data, better baseline data on what the current level of tree canopy coverage is in the township and so forth. So that's what I'm hoping to do in the next few minutes here. So I distributed this brief report, which talks about the mission of Let's Tree Wilmot as providing volunteers, education, and expertise to enhance the trees and the forest ecosystems in Wilmot Township. We envision a vibrant community of sustainable ecosystems with enhanced wooded, agricultural, and natural areas that provide environmental and quality of life benefits, such as shade, carbon sequestration, flood mitigation, wildlife habitat, water filtration with leisure, and personal rejuvenation opportunities. So that's it's a grand vision, and it's one that I think we all want to work towards, especially those of us who live near the NIF are very much aware of flooding and flood mitigation. I think all of us in this activity are also very much aware of the importance of sequestering carbon and reducing greenhouse gases and so forth. As we've talked within Let's Tree Wilmot about what specifically do we want our objectives to be, we want to be bold, and we thought the best way to do this, at least initially, is to simply endorse objectives that have been set out by GRCA for the Grand River watershed. And what GRCA is calling for and this is throughout the entire watershed of the Grand, is 30% forest cover in the watershed with 75% tree cover along streams, 40% canopy cover in urban and settlement areas, protecting and enhancing habitat for species at risk, and reducing invasive exotic plants. So one of my questions for this committee will be, and this may tie into the tree canopy policy review that I think Director of Development Services is going to be heading up in the coming months. What is Wilmot Township's objectives? Do we as a township have particular objectives? And if so, how does Let's Tree Wilmot mesh with that and so forth? Then what we've been doing thus far is we've planted trees in Scott Park, trees and shrubs, about 170 of them. This is along the riverbank, basically naturalizing, foresting a small section of the park along the riverbank. We had a donation there from Foresters Financial for that, as well as individual donors. We helped a farmer plant some seedlings in his land this spring. We have 4 plantings coming up this fall. Fall is kind of a prime season for tree planting. The first one is Tuesday in Baden at Sir Adam Beck Park. This particular planting is being sponsored by Home Hardware in cooperation with Wilmot Rotary. Home Hardware is providing the trees, also providing the sandwiches for you when you come to do your planting and so forth. And then the other 3 will be on Saturdays, October 2nd, 16th, and 23rd. The one in Baden we're doing Tuesday because Home Hardware wants to make it possible for a number of their staff to show up and participate. And Saturday is a really busy time for retail. So we're doing it as a late afternoon one so that more of their staff can participate in this planting. And I would really invite you to, all of you, to participate in one or more of these planting events. We do ask people to pre-register. That's to help us with planning, and it's also for COVID contact tracing purposes and so forth. You can do that through our website. I'll put the website link in the chat once I finish talking here. And yeah, encourage you to get involved with that. One of the things that wasn't mentioned in my written report is we also worked with the township in encouraging people to take greater opportunity of the program to replace Boulevard Trees. And so we targeted a few specific neighborhoods. We passed out doorknob hangers, made delivery to them. And I haven't heard exactly what the uptake has been on that. My impression is that it sparked an increased request for Boulevard tree replacements, but maybe somebody else can speak to that. If Jeff, you might know on that, I don't know. The other thing that we've been doing, some of our members, is looking at some of the trees that have been planted in the last 10 years on township property, either Boulevard trees or around some of the rec centers and so forth. And when you do that, it's actually a little disappointing. We've planted a lot of trees, but a lot of them are not thriving, either because the bark has been damaged with whippersnippers, or they've been mulched improperly, or so forth. And so we have a few people who have sort of taken upon themselves to document, produce some reports and pass these on to township staff. Hopefully we don't become too much thorns in the flesh and nags. Our intent in this is to be helpful as compared to be critical, but to really look at this, and maybe we can talk about some ideas for next summer at some point, if we might look at getting some money to hire some students or so forth to just tend some of the existing trees. In some cases, things that were staked and tied 10 years ago have not been unstaked or untied. Things that might have been mulched at one time are not mulched currently. There could be a variety of ways that we could sort of look at that. So we've been doing that as well. So I'll pause at this point and invite comments that you might have on, first of all, our objectives and how that might tie into township objectives, and then we'll talk about the need for baseline research.
Go ahead, Harold.
Thanks, Dean. That was a great overview. Listening to the goals and the objectives, it almost encapsulated entirely the ongoing Mike Scout Wetlands Preserve project on a singular scale, all of those items contained within that project. And so my first thought was, one of the things I think that would be great for this committee would be to do a site visit, safely distanced and such, but I'd be happy to find a time that works for this group to do a little tour. Earth is being moved as we speak. Trees, first round have been planted, and later this fall, the hope is that, and again, Let's Tree Wilmot's programs in the parks gives us hope that we'll be able to do a public event, hopefully with Let's Tree Wilmot involved. There is a plan to plant some tall stock trees and shrubs this fall, which requires manual labor. The 4,000 odd seedlings that GRCA mechanically planted this spring would have been pretty arduous task on a lot of backs if we were doing that by hand. So, but I think what you've presented aligns really, really well with what the township is doing and looking forward to. Certainly the tree canopy policy review and creating a tree canopy policy, I think aligns really well with what your goals as a group are. And my hope is that once we start that process, that it could be an active partnership in terms of coming up with not just a Let's Tree Wilmot goal for the community, but making that a township goal as well, to align those. Certainly the official plan created the structure for us to do the study, and now it's a matter of resources to pull that together. Again, it's across departments. Each department has its own components. Mr. Mullenhouse's group, certainly Parks and Rec and Development Services as well, in terms of how we approach both the public owned trees on boulevards, parks, but also the private side, site plan development, those sorts of applications where our standards should align across the board. So I think everything I've seen from your group so far is great. I'm looking forward to the ability to work with your group moving forward. And again, I would say that I think everything you said aligns exactly with what my vision and the rest of staff's vision, the township vision would be. From my perspective, I think it's a really good fit and a very beneficial relationship.
Howie, you said we're going to be doing a tree canopy policy. Can you include me on that from an asset management perspective?
Absolutely, you
Okay,
are
good, excellent.
definitely. I think one of the issues that is contained within Dean's presentation is that baseline data on tree canopy. I know through GIS that there's potential to do that. I know that there are others with more skills in GIS than I have. It would take me a while, but I know that we would have the technology to come up with a rough estimate as a baseline. But I also know that there may be sources of data from other organizations like GRCA that are readily available that would rather than us reinventing the wheel to seek out those sources of data that may be available to us. So certainly, Leslie, you would be high on the list of people to be included in that first discussion on where do we start, what's your policy. So absolutely.
Awesome, that's great.
Okay, then we'll go Dean and Jeff.
Yeah, just a couple things in follow-up. If you want us to be involved in getting volunteers to plant in the wetlands, let me know as soon as possible, sort of a tentative date for that, because we're kind of busy for the fall already. We're certainly happy to help out and we can do that, but the more lead time that we have to organize and get people recruited, that would be great. The other thing I was just wondering is what you're seeing at this point is as timeline for kicking off the canopy policy work.
We will connect you directly with, I'll have Phil Holst, who's the coordinator of the wetlands project, reach out to you.
Okay.
He will do that very quickly. So we will do that forthwith. The timing, the ideal would have been last year. And again, it comes down to the resources, but the work plan that council just dealt with indicated that there would be action occurring in the fourth quarter of this year, which is soon to begin. So it will be something that we will be looking at. I would say probably within a month and a half, at a staff level, and then we will decide the best course of action from there, which may or may not be a request as part of the budget process to look at the assistance of a consultant to bring the pieces together. Again, resources on these projects is always an issue, but we want to ensure that we end up with a good product. So that would be my commitment, is that you will see action in the next few, I'll say month. Let's put it that. I'll say month. I'll put month on it and my name attached to it. You'll see something in a month happening. It won't be done in a month, but you'll see something happening in a month.
Yeah. And we've been collecting some things from some other municipalities and so forth. Be happy to pass it on to you.
Question, Dean, can you share the events? Like you said, you have the home hardware event coming up, so that we can put it into the calendar on the website, so that we have, a place to go when we want to know when these events are happening.
Yeah, if you have that handout or that report that Ashton circulated a couple of days ago, they're listed in that, and the website for people to go to register is also there. It goes to our Let's Tree Wilmot website, and you click on the register button, takes you into an Eventbrite page that people can register. So that'd be great if you can do that, put it on the calendar. We'd really appreciate it.
And then any future events too that happen, just let us know and then we'll put them on the calendar, because I'm always looking for things to put in there. So
super.
Yeah,
happy to do that.
Jeff?
Thanks. I just wanted to echo the positive sentiments to start, just in terms of the positive collaboration that we've been having probably for the last couple of years with Let's Tree Wilmot. As you mentioned, since about March 2020, I think was almost close to when we had our first outreach from your group, and subsequent discussions over the course of last summer and quite a few over the fall of last year, and then leading obviously into this year. So just echoing that sentiment first, that it's been a very positive experience and a helpful one. Certainly an eager group to volunteer and to help and to provide support. We typically, for our reforestation contract and just our involvement with trees in general, street trees or whatever, we've always been challenged with resources to manage contracts, first of all, for this type of a contract for reforestation. Organizing contracts, details, working with landowners and whoever's making requests, stuff like that. It's just been a challenge historically for us to manage that administrative workload, and then obviously the field component to it. So we've certainly been thankful and grateful for the resource support that we've been given to date with Let's Tree Wilmot. I think we've had a few interactions, first of all, starting with things like, what types of trees we historically would select, and gaining some feedback from some of your members who are, very well educated and certainly have the experience with trees and tree management. So we're appreciative of that. It's been helpful from your group that we've gotten that feedback and can, change some of our stuff online for what things we would give to residents, as far as, or options I guess we would give to residents as far as what trees they could select. We've worked on I believe we have been working on an education campaign as well. I think that's a key part of what the dialogue has been about. So first of all, it was working in some key areas for marketing to say, hey, this is the program that the township does, and we've kind of leaned on Let's Tree Wilmot to help us with that message. But then further to that, working with Let's Tree Wilmot to educate homeowners, because as you mentioned, there's some trees out there that don't make it very long, and part of it is a planting condition and what they're planted within, but then the other part of it too is how they're treated through the first year of their life. So or first year of their planting. So we've been definitely appreciative of that support as well, on the education side, because it is more of a challenge, I think, for some folks to understand, as far as, there is a watering need to it, and there is a maintenance need to it, maybe more so than watering. I mean, how we, mow around it and stuff like that, that can make it a challenge for trees to survive. So we definitely do not have the resources to go out and do that ourselves, to work on education. So when we can rely on volunteerism, and it's a positive experience and it's a helpful experience for residents and for us, we're certainly really appreciative of that. So I just wanted to say that message. To your question about uptake and how we kind of tie, we'll say, some of those metrics of working with Let's Tree Wilmot to our contract for this year. I don't have those metrics available. I can certainly look at the information that we have for our requests. In the past couple of years, we've centralized our process for tree requests, where it used to be sort of a random phone call and then, left a voicemail type of thing, and then we take a note and write it down. And that's how it used to work. And so we've kind of changed that to centralizing it to an online form, which has given us much greater control of the process. And I feel anyways, it's been helpful to communicate with residents as well, just in terms of they can do their own research of what tree they like. They can come through and submit information and submit a request for specific tree types. So it's helped us sort of manage that a bit better. We did, I think, change a part of the form this year to include the education piece, if people were willing. And I think we tried to tie some information to, did you hear about us through marketing and that kind of thing too. So I'll see what I can find up and report back through this committee on that. One question I did have in relation to volunteers and support, I believe we've had discussion in the past with Let's Tree Wilmot as far as identifying an inventory, or at least helping with the inventory identification for trees. And I think that might be an opportunity moving forward as well, because again, that might be a resource crunch if we're the Canopy component is one thing, but identifying our inventory and what types of trees we have conditions and stuff like that too, tying into sort of asset process. And I think there was some discussion with Let's Tree Wilmot and a willingness to support that with resources. And so I'm just kind of asking that question, maybe at this point it doesn't need to be answered, but I think that opportunity was there in the past. And I'm curious if something could work out there in the future. If we do get into some of these more detailed inventory processes, there's an opportunity there for volunteers and collaboration there as well.
Just to respond to that, the tree inventory is something that we have talked about. And a couple of our members went and participated in a workshop a couple of years ago that was, not sure if that was by Woolwich Township or who, but came back quite enthused about it. So it is a very labor intensive undertaking, as you're aware. But I think as we talk about review of tree canopy and policy around that, I think that would be something that could feed into that if we want to do then, an inventory of existing boulevard trees, for example, and what shape they're in and so forth. That would be very helpful information down the road, and we're certainly would be open to helping with that and providing some volunteer energy for it. Yeah. While I'm talking, I'll just add in terms of future plans, we're planting a few hundred trees this year. I'm hoping that next year, when we're a little bit more out of the COVID zone, we'll be planting a few thousand. Most of our planting has been on township land. This year, we want to expand that into also assisting private property owners in planting, because if we're looking at reaching the kind of objectives we're talking about, most of the land is private land. It's not township land. And so we really want to work with private landowners as well. And we are in conversation with township staff. Parks and Rec has been fabulous to work with in terms of the parks. We're looking at perhaps doing some significant planting next year around the rec center, and that sort of triangle of land near the rec center, just north of Highway 7-8 on the road towards Baden. Is one of the places that's been talked about. The Baden Sandhills Trail parking area, beginning of the trail and the parking area is another one that conversation is happening for future planting. So we're looking at things. And if any of you have ideas about where you would like us to be involved, particularly municipal land, feel free to open up the conversation.
Councillor Penny?
So it's a great segue. I was gonna say I would really like to have Let's Tree Wilmot come to a trails committee meeting, because as we're opening up new trails, and you mentioned the Baden Hills Trail, there are other pieces of trail that don't have any substantial vegetation and could use some trees, and looking at what species might be appropriate there, I think would be a really fantastic conversation to have with the Trails Committee. So I'll let you know when we can put that on the agenda. We have a meeting next week, but I think our agenda's pretty full, so probably the month after. We do meet monthly.
That'd be great. And next week I'm away anyway, so next month would be perfect.
Okay, any other questions for Dean? Okay, thank you, Dean, for that presentation. Again, echoing the comments, Harold and Jeff and everyone else. Just thank you for your involvement with that group and that group in general. Lots of things going on, and glad to see that. Okay, all right, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. That is Zero Waste Month. So Leslie asked to have that put on the agenda, and as a committee we can discuss. I guess that's next month. Have any ideas of how to handle this year's Zero Waste Month?
Yeah, I thought that we could just chat, because last year I think it was like in October and we're like, let's do it. So if you have anything you'd like us to do, I do not mind heading it up. I just need some help. So let me know.
Councillor Fenning?
So I think last year, if I remember correctly, certain staff members participated in some very fun and entertaining videos that were shared. I think we had a lot more ambitious plans than what ended up being possible with COVID sort of making everything take longer. But yeah, I really appreciate Leslie, that you're willing to head it, because if you tell me where to go and what to do, that's going to suit my ability a little bit better right now, because I've got a few too many other things that I'm trying to organize. So I am willing to be organized. But yeah, I'd like to talk about what do we do? I had to reach out an email from Reap Green Solutions. So their project of their Zero Waste Challenge, the Mason Jar Challenge. I think that's a really successful sort of personal activity for people to engage in. And if I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on how to encourage that, besides sharing it out and social media messaging. But yeah, I have participated in that the last few years, and plan to challenge people again maybe this year. I challenged all of council for the last 2 years. Didn't get such great uptake, but maybe I'll do better this year.
I think we've got a little more reach now this year. I don't think we had the Facebook page up and going not till maybe later in October last year, I think it was. So I think we can really maybe hammer away at that. That's going to get a lot more outreach and probably some uptake with it then too. And especially getting some ideas. I don't know if Tova if they have a basket of ideas and things like that too that can be put out there, other than the Mason Jar Challenge, and what else can we do to help with that then.
Speaking of REAP, just a quick update. I think in first council meeting in October, they are coming forward to bring their annual report that they normally do. So that'll be actually a great timing and part of their 0 month effort, waste efforts as well. But yeah, any other, I can reach out to Tova to see if she has kind of a basket and maybe a list of ideas we can kind of look at. I just guess looking at the rest of the committee, any ideas that I think we can capitalize on, Dean?
This is not an idea, but a question with respect to REAP. I'm not quite sure sort of what the relationship there is, and whether REAP provides services to Wilmot Township. I've heard that basically they provide services to municipalities that provide funding to them. I'm not quite sure what our status and relationship is here in Wilmot Township. Can anyone?
Yep, I can answer that. Maybe not to great detail, but REAP helps on a number of initiatives. A couple of years ago, they were a partner on the repaving or depaving an area in New Hamburg. Another thing that they're they're involved with is the wet water efficiency initiatives through the region of Waterloo. So consequently, all of our water customers do follow under that umbrella. So they would come into a home and do a water audit to ensure that you have all those water efficiency technologies on your plumbing fixtures. Those are two of the bigger ones I have, and I know they just do general home efficiency energy audits as well. As one of their bigger pieces, and most notably from our perspective, they are a partner with Climate Action WR. So it's Sustainable Water Region and REAP. They collaboratively work together, and they both own that committee, the Climate Action. So that in turn had that Transform WR plan that we did approve. Okay, so if there aren't any other, Councillor Fenning?
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up, Leslie. What format would you like us to reach out to you with ideas, or how do you want to go about organizing us?
So I think that when I was thinking about this before, I'll do it kind of like I did Earth Week, which daily emails went out to everybody in, well, I guess in the workplace, not like in staff. But this is going to be staff and Township of Wilmot. So I think what I'll do is I'll do it weekly email blast to staff, and then Facebook post to citizens with a challenge for the week, and with things that are around zero waste. So if you have ideas, I would just email them to me. I'll create a document of what I plan to talk about and then circulate it to the group, and you can add whatever you'd like to it, and then I will coordinate with Kelly to post onto Facebook. So yeah, so anything that you think about, just let me know. I have a couple of ideas already. I know everyone really likes the idea of doing the mason jar challenge, but I think we should try with the small steps. So maybe a weekly challenge to your counselor friends, and see if they can do it just for a week, 5 days, 7 days, something like that, and then see what you have at the end. I think that would be a great opportunity for you. Once I challenge you to show us on Friday what waste you have, what each counselor has. So I think that would be a great event or challenge. So yeah, so email me, let me know.
Okay, thanks, Leslie, and I'll connect with you. I'll certainly help you out with planning and everything.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so there's no correspondence, and move on to round table. The only thing I have to bring up is just I know we're at a new time at 10 o'clock on a Thursday for this particular meeting, but I just wanted to reach out to the committee if this is more of a suitable time for members to attend. And if that's good, do we want to set up kind of maybe a similar rotation, maybe again, like the second Thursday at 10 o'clock, if that works with everyone's schedules, or if there's another day within business hours that's more suitable, or do we want to revert back to that 4 o'clock time? Totally up to the committee. Feel free to jump in and provide your feedback.
I love the 10 o'clock. It's perfect for me.
Okay. So if I propose the second Thursday at 10 o'clock, everyone's okay with that?
Sure.
So we'll do that. Hopefully, and that doesn't change again, and we'll stick to that schedule. So I guess the next scheduled meeting would be in October 14th at 10 o'clock. So I'll update our calendars accordingly, and by the next meeting, hopefully we'll have some updates with respect to the Transform WR action items. Okay, is there anyone else? We'll go around, any other updates? I'll just go around the square here. Dean?
No.
Harold? Okay, Councillor Fenning? Oh, Jeff? John?
Well, I do have a question, or I guess maybe I just want to raise a point, and I don't know, this kind of is a little bit of maybe a pet peeve with me. I'm going to throw it out there. Maybe I need to ask, maybe it's Jeff or Harold on this. Is there a reason why, and it happens at all levels, at municipal, regional, and provincial level, that they cut the grass along all the regional municipal roads and highways and everything along the sides of the roads and whatnot? Is there a reason that they have to do that? Anyone got an answer?
I'm just trying to find my unmute button here. So first and foremost, if it's a roadside grass cutting operation, typically the guide for depends where you are. If you're in the rural or if you're in the urban, it might be a bit different. But rural, we try to maintain visibility and sight lines, and that's probably the biggest thing for grass cutting. There are things like trying to keep grass sort of away from the roadbed as well, because if it does kind of get into roadbed, it can sort of impact your road. That's mostly in the rural. If you're in the urban, it's a bit different. I think in many cases, it's probably more so for aesthetics, and the look.
Yeah.
Primarily it will be for, maintaining sight lines, but in some cases, actually in many cases, there's an aesthetic piece to it that would very likely be a driver.
Yeah, urban is one thing. Rural, though, it's just, man, I see it, especially along Bleams Road, because I live there, and where the region comes along, and the last time they did it, they cut right up to the edge of the field where the crops are growing, basically, and then they come to a post and they got to lift the mower and go around it, and it never gets done. But they're late. Then all the dead grasses and everything is just laying there, and aesthetically, it's terrible that way. And then it uncovers garbage and everything else too. And I'm thinking we could get our greenhouse gas emission goal done in about a year if we can stop some of that stuff, I think, because it just, I don't know. To me, it just seems like a complete waste.
Yeah, in some cases too. Like, I mean, road is one piece, but there may also be a component of drainage that they're trying to meet as well. So there's going to be there may be I mean, it depends where you are and what level of service is provided. So I'm not sure exactly what the region would have for a level of service in terms of how often they would come cut, or they would do it. We probably don't get too many more ourselves, more than 1 or 2 passes probably in a year. And we try not to get too far into, into, we'll call it the rural boulevard, unless we need to for drainage purposes or something like that. There are owners too that, if we only cut the first 3 or 4 feet, some owners, it's obviously sort of looked at like, we call it like sort of a leased space, if you will. Some owners are going to come in and do their own maintenance to it and want to clear cut themselves as well. So there is a different standard there, but yeah, so I can't speak to why maybe the region would do that on Bleams. I mean, they would have their own operational needs and they would have their own operational reasons. And they have their own operational level of service that, would dictate how often they get around, and how far they go into the boulevard to cut.
Yeah. It seems that this year they did it more than any other year. And I look at it and I think, boy, the textures and different heights of the grasses and plants and everything looked a whole lot better than all the dead stuff laying on the ground. So, but if there's a valid reason for it, then fine. But I don't know. Aesthetically, it doesn't look that good. But anyway, I digress.
Great. And Leslie? Okay. All right. So that's everything on the agenda. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Leslie. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next month.